Hi, it's Hillary Potts, sharing with you leadership strategies for you to bring your best to any business situation. I know how challenging it can be to lead and implement strategies and projects. I'm the author of The Truth About Change, and it's a guide to help leaders successfully execute strategic initiatives. You can order a copy on Amazon.com. Today, I'm going to share some insights from the book. As leaders, we're charged with growing and enhancing businesses. Change is a constant. So much so that many leaders try to ignore it. In this segment, we're going to talk about the concept of a leader change roadmap. It's a framework to help you think, strategize, plan, and execute strategic initiatives. It's a way to get to the bottom of what's really changing and how to build engagement throughout the organization to turn your strategy into positive results. If you're like most leaders and driving business results is key to you, then figuring out how to lead with and through others is going to be critical to you and your organization's success. It isn't always easy, as people don't necessarily always agree with the business changes. So why a leader change roadmap? You've probably heard the famous phrase, if you fail to plan, you plan for failure. I can't tell you how many leaders actually move off without their own leadership plans. So if you want to be successful in your strategic initiative, then stop winging it and think through and thoughtfully map out your own roadmap. A leader without a well thought out leader roadmap sabotaged the execution of a critical strategy. How did that happen? In his conversations with leaders, he continued to express his concerns that the organization wouldn't be able to implement the strategy. He knew the execution of the strategy would take everyone acting in different ways, but he couldn't quite articulate what needed to occur and how to get it accomplished. He had a vision, he saw the outcomes, but he also knew that the leaders weren't totally bought in onto the strategy. He also didn't own his own roadmap, which would link his actions to the strategic plans. He hadn't thought through how his actions were impacting others in the organization. So, if he was saying the effort was going to fail, why in the world would anyone else want to stick their neck out to try to make it work? There are so many challenges that occur that can be solved with a leader change roadmap. I want to share with you a few of those challenges. First, hours, weeks, and months can be spent on a strategy, so much so that leaders get actually comfortable with the solution. And so then it's all of a sudden assumed that the strategy, when it's announced, that everyone will fall in line. While other leaders are used to project plans and other ways to track their projects, they usually don't spend enough time truly mapping out the actions to move from strategy to execution. It's assumed that if it's a line item in the project, that it will be implemented, and that people are kind of acting like widgets on an assembly line. Leaders in high-performing organizations take the time to really think through what needs to be done and also how to engage the organization to get it done. They take the time to bridge the gap between a strategy, the plan, execution, and results. When a new strategy or project is announced, while it's important, quite frankly, it's not the only thing that's going on. Projects teams can get so focused on individual project activities that they don't have a good understanding of the impact these actions can have on the organization. So it's easy to set unrealistic expectations and timelines, and that as things get underway, they kind of underestimate what it really will take to get these key priorities done. Without leadership taking a holistic view of what's going on and guiding the way, people can get overwhelmed and discouraged with so many projects coming at them at once. Finally, I find initiatives fail when leadership is not in full agreement or alignment about how to deploy a strategy. You would think that after all the conversations that everyone would be on the same page. And it's also assumed that if you're sitting around the table that you agree. And this can be so far from the truth. I've seen too many occasions when leaders push the team forward assuming that head nods are agreement. I heard from that one leader actually banned people from the meeting if they didn't agree with the initiative. Leaders need to be continually discussing and checking to see that the organization is in alignment and agreement. It doesn't mean pushing and shoving people into acceptance. It does mean being the leader that can listen to all sides, that can weigh the risks and the rewards, and can chart the right course of action for all the work efforts. Otherwise, you will find your organization doing a ton of work on an initiative and having minimal results. So the solution, a leader change roadmap, which lays out a plan for what, when, and how a leader will engage in the actions. It brings together things like the business plan, case for change, the project plan, the communications that go with any initiative, leadership work sessions, the identification of the new behaviors and skills we're asking for in the organization, and those training plans. All of this is pulled together, mapped out, so that a leader can see the actions they need to take so that the execution of the effort is from start to finish. What I found in advising others is that the creation of a leader change roadmap is a very helpful strategic thinking tool to guide leaders' actions. So let me give you an example. When I was working with a leadership team on the centralization of some core processes, each business area at the time had their own way of approaching these processes. The company decided to streamline and reduce the redundancies and the duplication of efforts. Leaders were in agreement that the idea in theory was a good idea. Well, when they went to implementation, it was a whole different story. One region, well, they moved ahead quickly and were able to implement the changes. Another region, well, they announced the initiative, but they never got anything started. Yet another region announced it, but they were met with such objections that the team finally decided not to move forward. And then there were several of the regions that actually did nothing. So implementation became very chaotic. The leaders realized that they did not have a concerted effort and that they decided to restart the implementation. So here's what they did. We spent some time creating the leader change roadmap. We then talked about, and at the time, the leaders were a little bit skeptical about what it was going to take. The conversations were not easy because people weren't in full agreement. And quite frankly, they had to admit that they weren't fully bought in. But through the conversations, through mapping out what was going to happen, how was it going to happen, they created a case for change that they could outline the desired actions. We discussed the issues and we built ways to mitigate those issues in the implementation plan. When the regional leaders saw these discussions were helping them to know what to do, when to do it, how to do it, they saw the value of a leader change roadmap. And they used this throughout the implementation as they found additional issues and bottlenecks to address. Let's discuss 4 of the elements that go into creating a leader change roadmap to get you from point A to point B. If you're deploying a strategic initiative, you're acquiring emerging businesses, you're reorganizing a business organization, you're implementing new processes, it behooves you to understand the changes and the impact those changes are going to have on the organization. Otherwise, you'll have a terrific idea that will be met with a whole lot of resistance. So just because it's the right thing to do doesn't mean that people are going to automatically take action. They're going to need your help. So it's easy to assume that everyone will be on the same page, but they're not. So through a series of discussions, you want to outline what's happening, why it's happening, how the implementation will be carried out, who's going to be involved. While it may seem a little uncomfortable to listen to these objections, they are heart of helping you to resolve those objections and clear the path for implementation. Second, prioritize and sequence activities. I see too often leaders piling on work on top of work on top of work without thinking about whether people are capable or have the capacity to execute the variety of activities in addition to what they're doing on a daily basis. When too many different change activities get piled on, people may not even pay attention to the right initiatives at the right time. People may still be processing information from the last work session, and now you're hitting them with something new. Best to take a holistic view of all the initiatives and activities. So what do I mean by this? Take into consideration what's happening across the organization before announcing a stream of new initiatives. Is there a way that you can help simplify and help people understand what's going on? Recognize that what's on piece of paper or in a project plan gets very complicated in a hurry as it gets implemented throughout the organization. So by prioritizing and sequencing the actions, you're helping people focus on what they need to do. Think of your leader change roadmap as your master plan. Determine how you can prioritize and sequence what needs to get accomplished. Determine how to give clear direction and simplify what needs to get done so people throughout the organization won't get overwhelmed. Look across an initiative and identify those bottlenecks. Will leaders and associates struggle to implement what seems like a very simple task? And how can you pave the way to a much smoother implementation? Number 3, you want to lay out what's new and what's different, and also what stays the same. When people know the 2 or 3 things that they need to do to participate in an initiative, it makes it a lot easier to engage. Be as specific as you can. Identify those new behaviors. Know what you're asking of people. In times of change, it can be very difficult for other people to figure it out. You want to help them know how to be involved, and then you can be involved to help coach, remove barriers, and give feedback. A leader plays a very key role in this whole learning curve, so make sure you're visible and engaged in observing and talking about the changes. By the way, there's a tendency to be fooled into thinking that the changes that you're making are insignificant. Don't be fooled. Too often I hear leaders talk themselves out of an implementation and saying it's no big deal, when it becomes a very big deal for others that are trying to make those changes. So don't assume a very simple task such as asking people to change the team they're on, filling out a form, using a new procedure, approaching customers with new requests, that this will happen automatically. This can be a major change for someone to think about how to do it, when to do it, where to do it. So some of the most simple requests can have the greatest impact on people. Best to ask and get them involved. And finally, what I've found is when a leader is engaged, their team is engaged. The behaviors to lead change aren't much different than leading on the daily business. However, I find that they are highly underutilized, and that when leaders get busy managing their own work, they're not leading the work of others. So here are a few leadership behaviors that I found extremely helpful that will help you engage and lead in change. Number 1, be involved, be visible. It means walk on the halls. It means checking in with people. It means contacting them. It means being willing to hear the challenges, concerns, and issues that other people have and facilitating the conversations to find workable solutions. Share what's going on. Communicate. And do that with the audience in mind. This means less telling and more engaging people in the discussion. Craft messages that send clear information and help address people's concerns. You want to show resilience. This means being flexible and maintaining a very positive energy and talking positively about the change. It also means being authentic. So when things are going wrong, name them and resolve them. Help others move through obstacles with ease. And there's bound to be bumps in the road. You're not going to be able to have anticipated everything, but teams can waste a ton of time struggling with these obstacles. Find creative solutions to these difficult situations. And finally, provide feedback. Ample, positive, and constructive feedback often. People need to know what they're doing right, and they also need to know where they're off base and where they can get back on track. If you want to accelerate the process, then start by considering your actions and the impact your actions have on others. You want to start to make different choices on how to get engaged at the right times in the right way, and map out and understand how to engage others in the initiative. When executing your strategy, don't be content to wait and see what will happen. Get involved. Use your leader change roadmap to really make it happen. It's been great chatting with you. This is Hillary Potts. I provide leadership strategies to help you bring out your best. If you've liked what you've heard and you want more ideas, please download the Leader Change Toolkit now. Inside the toolkit, you'll find ways to get prepared for significant projects. You'll find information on a framework to help you lead the effort, and there are more details on those 5 time-tested leadership behaviors to successfully navigate any situation. You can find them at hilarpotts.com/resources.html. You can also find additional information on my website at www.hilarypotts.com. Also check out The Truth About Change because it walks through successfully ways to execute strategic initiatives. And I also have another book, The Executive Transition Playbook, that's a step-by-step process to make the most of your first 100 days. Both books are available on Amazon.com. Also, my website is chock full of my coaching and consulting approach, tips and tools, blogs, podcasts, and videos. Until the next time, continue to bring your best to leading yourself and others. Bye for